Every NFL decade is special, but the 2000s were truly something else. Quarterbacks got absolutely crushed.
Hit as he throws, that's an interception, it's picked off by Florence.
Receivers paid a price for crossing the middle.
Listen, this is a clean hit.
And defenses played like every snap was a street fight.
I don't blame Teague for doing that.
This was still a league where corners could drill receivers, where blindside blocks were legal, and where quarterbacks got no special treatment. But behind the chaos was some of the most unforgettable storylines in NFL history. Tom Brady rising from a 6th-round nobody to a dynasty starter, the Rams lighting up the league only to fall to a miracle, the Patriots building a cold-blooded machine, and teams like the Panthers, Bears, and Giants clawing their way to Super Bowls nobody ever thought they could reach. So let's dive into the most violent and unforgettable decade in NFL history, starting in the year 2000. Now, right from week one, it was pretty clear that something was different. Defenses were faster, hits were meaner, and offenses had to fight for every inch. No team embodied that more than the Baltimore Ravens in 2000. They gave up just 165 points the entire season, meaning opponents averaged just around 10 points per game on them. In October, the Ravens didn't score a touchdown themselves, and they still stayed competitive because their defense was so good. And that man, well, that was Ray Lewis. He was the reason why. In the playoffs, the Ravens bullied the Broncos, humiliated the Titans, and embarrassed the Raiders, holding them all to under 10 points. By the time they reached Super Bowl 35, the New York Giants never even stood a chance. Baltimore's defense forced 5 turnovers, scored a pick 6, and gave up just 152 total yards on the biggest stage. And the wild part too is that the Ravens quarterback was Trent Dilfer, who is someone that would be a backup on most teams. Meanwhile, a rookie named Brian Urlacher took over Chicago and instantly became one of the most feared linebackers in the game, and the league MVP was Rich Gannon, a 35-year-old quarterback who'd been bounced around for over a decade, suddenly led the Raiders to the playoffs with 3,400 yards and 24 touchdowns. It was also the year a skinny, unathletic quarterback from Michigan got drafted 199th overall. And spoiler alert, he might be an important character later on. A year later, things were a lot different, not just for football, but for the entire country. The season kicked off under the shadow of 9/11, and for the first time, the NFL felt bigger than sports. Games were postponed, players wore American flag decals on their helmets, and stadiums became sites of unity. But out of the chaos came a quarterback no one saw coming. Week 2, the Patriots lose Drew Bledsoe to a brutal hit from Mo Lewis, one of the hardest hits you'll ever see. And in came a nobody, a 6th-round pick who looked like a backup accountant. That man, it was Tom Brady. By the end of the season, New England had clawed their way to the Super Bowl, facing the greatest show on turf, a Rams team that had looked invincible on paper. Kurt Warner, Marshall Faulk, Torrey Holt, Isaac Bruce, and they were averaging nearly 31 points a game. Fast forward to the Super Bowl on the final drive with 1:30 left, no timeouts, and it being a tie game, John Madden said the Patriots should play for overtime. Instead, Brady marched them down the field like it was drawn up in the dirt. Vinatieri lines up, 48 yards, and nails it. It was the beginning of a dynasty, but they had competition. The Bears came out of nowhere behind a punishing defense and a wild rookie named Anthony Thomas. The Steelers had the league's best record with Jerome Bettis trucking linebackers in a defense that bullied everyone. The Eagles were starting to rise behind Donovan McNabb and Brian Dawkins, and Michael Strahan broke the single-season sack record with 22.5. But as wild as that was, 2002 didn't disappoint. The league realigned for the first time in decades. 32 teams, 8 divisions, a brand new structure, and the Texans were born. The Buccaneers had been building a monster on defense for years as well. They had the pieces, Sapp, Rice, Brooks, Barber, Lynch, but never the coach to put it all together. So they pulled off one of the wildest trades in NFL history. Tampa Bay gave up 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, and $8 million in cash for a head coach from the Raiders, John Gruden. It truly did just seem stupid. But then the Bucs defense led the league in points allowed, yards allowed, and interceptions. Meanwhile out west, the Raiders, Gruden's old team, were still rolling. Rich Gannon was playing like an MVP, Jerry Rice and Tim Brown, somehow still dangerous in their late 30s, were carving up defenses, and Bill Callahan had kept Gruden's system intact. So when the Super Bowl came, the NFL got the perfect storyline: Raiders vs. Bucs. But the problem was that Gruden knew everything. The Raiders didn't change a thing. He called out their plays before they ran them. Tampa Bay's defense picked off Gannon 5 times, returned 3 for touchdowns, and buried the Raiders 48-21. But the rest of the league wasn't sitting still. In Tennessee, Steve McNair was a one-man army. The Jets started slow, but Chad Pennington came out of nowhere, took over mid-season, and suddenly looked like a star, beating Peyton Manning in the playoffs 41-0. Brian Dawkins recorded a sack, an interception, a receiving touchdown, and a rushing touchdown in the same game. Oh, and that one 6th-round pick player on the Patriots, turns out he just got lucky because he missed the playoffs entirely. He was definitely just a one-hit wonder, or so we thought. After losing the first game of the 2003 season 0-31, Tom Brady became a man on a mission. He led the Pats all the way to the Super Bowl, where they would have to face the Carolina Panthers. In the final minutes, Brady did what he was already becoming known for. He led a game-winning drive in the clutch. Vinatieri nailed the kick, Patriots 32, Panthers 29. New England had their second ring in 3 years. But outside of Foxborough, the league was in absolute chaos. Peyton Manning threw for over 4,200 yards and 29 touchdowns. He and Marvin Harrison were just absolutely telepathic, and Reggie Wayne was just getting started. In Baltimore, Ray Lewis was back. He won Defensive Player of the Year and led a unit that made grown men question their careers. In Kansas City, running back Priest Holmes was the most unstoppable weapon in football, as he scored 27 touchdowns in 2003, which was a record at the time. The Vikings were putting up points like crazy too. Randy Moss went for 1,600 yards and 17 touchdowns, but little did he know his career was just about to change. The only normal thing in 2004 was Tom Brady and the Patriots winning the Super Bowl. Peyton Manning threw for 4,557 yards and 49 touchdowns, a record at the time. The Pittsburgh Steelers re-emerged as a powerhouse with Ben Roethlisberger, a rookie showing flashes of franchise quarterback he'd become. But after the season, the Vikings shocked the football world by trading Randy Moss to the Oakland Raiders in exchange for linebacker Napoleon Harris, defensive end Tyron Carter, and a 2005 first-round pick. And yes, Moss did have a down year, but this felt like just straight up highway robbery. Or so we thought. Because in 2005, Randy Moss was battling injuries and looked pretty mid out on the field. After helping the Eagles reach the Super Bowl the year before, Terrell Owens was suspended and eventually deactivated after fighting with teammates and clashing with coaches. Steelers running back Shaun Alexander had put up video game numbers that year, putting up nearly 1,900 rushing yards and 27 touchdowns. In the championship round, the playoffs came down to Steelers vs. Colts and Seahawks vs. Patriots. The Colts had the best record in football at 14-2, but they couldn't match Pittsburgh's physicality. The game ended with a Mike Vanderjagt, one of the most accurate kickers in NFL history, shanking a potential game-tying field goal so badly that it looked like he kicked a beach ball. New England got absolutely punched in the mouth as Tom Brady threw 2 red zone interceptions, including a 100-yard pick six to Champ Bailey. And in Super Bowl 40, the Steelers sealed it with a trick play touchdown from a wide receiver and sent Jerome Bettis out as a champion. The officiating was awful, but Pittsburgh didn't care. They were Super Bowl champions. And I mean, heading into 2006, not much was changing, as for years, Peyton Manning had been putting up video game stats, but every postseason ended the same: hit, rattled, and sent home. Some said he couldn't win when things got ugly, and it's no secret this was an ugly era. In 2006, the Colts were still built around offense: Peyton, Reggie Wayne, Marvin Harrison, and rookie running back Joseph Adai. But the defense was ranked dead last in rushing yards allowed, and I mean, that unit was soft and everyone knew it. But then the playoffs came and everything changed. They beat the Chiefs by holding Larry Johnson to just 32 rushing yards, and then they survived a turnover-filled game against Baltimore. And then in the AFC Championship game, after being down 21-3, Peyton Manning went crazy, leading the biggest comeback in AFC title game history, and he finally beat Brady, and he finally got to go to the Super Bowl. But it wouldn't be easy. The Bears were absolutely terrifying. Brian Urlacher led a swarming, violent defense. Devin Hester was returning kicks left and right, and in the Super Bowl, Hester returned the opening kickoff 92 yards for a touchdown, the first time that it had ever happened. But after that, Peyton Manning stayed calm, the Colts defense clamped down, and Manning walked away a champion. Not only that too, but the league was beginning to shift. The Saints, 1 year removed from Hurricane Katrina, were reborn with Drew Brees and rookie Reggie Bush, and Sean Payton had them playing fearless. Meanwhile, Randy Moss was practically begging to leave Oakland after finishing with just 553 yards and 3 touchdowns, and then there was LT, who put together one of the most insane seasons in NFL history. He rushed for 1,815 yards and 28 touchdowns, caught 500 more yards, and threw for 2 touchdowns. It really did seem like the league was changing, but one thing was constant: Tom Brady. The New England Patriots went absolutely nuclear this year, because this is when they got Randy Moss for a 4th round pick. Yes, a 4th round pick. Brady threw for 50 touchdowns, Moss caught 23 of them, and both were NFL records at the time. They absolutely ran up scores, they disrespected coaches, and they played like every snap was personal. They finished the regular season 16-0, perfect, unstoppable, and Brady to Moss looked absolutely unfair. People started calling them the best team ever, and they had a chance to have a perfect season after making it to the Super Bowl. But on the other side, something strange was happening. The New York Giants squeaked into the playoffs at 10-6, then went on the road and beat the Cowboys, beat Brett Favre at Lambeau, and clawed their way to the Super Bowl as the biggest underdogs in over a decade. But some way, somehow, David beat Goliath with a big thanks to a helmet catch by David Tyree. The Patriots' perfect season was dead. Oh, and Michael Vick went to federal prison also for his involvement in a dogfighting ring, which we had to mention. In 2008 though, the Patriots were out for revenge. Brady to Moss was supposed to run it back, but on the first drive of the season, Tom Brady got folded, low hit, torn ACL, season over. Somehow they still did manage to win 11 games with Matt Castle, who was a backup and hadn't started since high school, but that's how loaded this roster was. And it wasn't just the Patriots that were unraveling. Brett Favre unretired, the Packers then traded him to the Jets, and he started hot and then completely collapsed. Meanwhile, the league just got turned upside down. In Oakland, rookie Jamarcus Russell became the biggest draft bust ever. Kurt Warner, who was bagging groceries a decade earlier, put on a final show with Larry Fitzgerald, who went absolutely nuclear in the playoffs. Fitz had 546 yards and 7 touchdowns in just 3 games, torching everyone. And I mean, literally, his run was straight out of a movie. He led the Cardinals all the way to the Super Bowl, where they would have to face the best defense in football in the Pittsburgh Steelers. And in one of the most memorable Super Bowls ever, Warner and Fitzgerald hit on a 64-yard touchdown to take the lead late, but Big Ben didn't flinch. He led one of the greatest drives in Super Bowl history, capped off with a toe-tapping triple-covered catch by Santonio Holmes in the corner of the end zone for the Steelers to win the game. I still don't think he got his toes down. Now in 2009 though, the following year, the Saints started 13-0. The Superdome was absolutely wild, and New Orleans was partying like they had waited their whole lives because, well, they had. But they weren't alone. The Colts were also 14-0. Peyton Manning was at the peak of his powers, winning his 4th MVP, but neither team had the drama of Brett Favre and the Vikings. Favre showed up late to camp and still played like a man possessed. At 40 years old, he threw 33 touchdowns, beat the Packers twice, and had Minnesota thinking Super Bowl for the first time in decades. And then came the NFC Championship game, Saints vs Vikings. This was during Bountygate, so the Saints practically targeted Favre all game. High, lows, late shots, constant pressure. It was so violent that it sparked the Bountygate investigation just years later. But somehow, Brett Favre kept coming. He had the Vikings in field goal range with seconds left, and then he did what Brett Favre always does. Across his body, into traffic, picked off. Overtime, Saints win the toss, kick a 40-yarder, and that's the ballgame. The Saints were going to the Super Bowl, and Peyton Manning was waiting for them. And in the Super Bowl II, the Colts came out hot, but Sean Payton made the gutsiest call of his life. Onside kick to start the second half, and it worked and changed everything. Fourth quarter, Manning trailing, he dropped back, Tracy Porter jumps the route, pick six, game over. Elsewhere in the league, Tom Brady returned from injury, but the Patriots were off. They got smacked by the Ravens in the wild card round, and T.O. was in Buffalo just wasting away. Add to that Jamarcus Russell hitting rock bottom with the Raiders, and by the year's end, he was benched, overweight, and just completely finished from the NFL. And as crazy as it sounds too, all of a sudden there was only 1 year left in the decade, but it wouldn't disappoint. Every powerhouse crumbled, every favorite fell, and by the end, it wasn't about who had the best team, it was about who was left standing. Let's start with the Dallas Cowboys. They opened the season with Super Bowl expectations, new stadium, loaded roster, Romo in his prime. But by mid-season, Wade Phillips was fired, Tony Romo was hurt, and the team collapsed to 6-10. Over in Minnesota, the Brett Favre comeback tour turned into a funeral, and the magic from the 2009 season completely vanished. The locker room was in complete disaster, the Metrodome roof literally collapsed, and after one too many brutal hits, Favre's legendary Ironman streak ended at 297 games. Meanwhile, Michael Vick was reborn after 2 years in prison and a quiet return in Philly. He took over for Kevin Kolb and set the league on absolute fire. But no one saw what was coming next. The Seattle Seahawks won the NFC West at 7-9. Yes, under 500. They were supposed to be a joke, and instead they hosted the defending champion Super Bowl Saints in the wildcard round, and then the earth shook. Beastquake. Marshawn Lynch went full beast mode, breaking 9 tackles, throwing defenders into the dirt, and sending literal shockwaves through the stadium. But while the world watched the chaos, Aaron Rodgers was making his move. The Packers barely made the playoffs as they were a 6th seed, banged up, and underdogs, but it didn't matter. Rodgers carved up the Eagles, humiliated the Falcons, and stunned the Bears in a freezing NFC title game where Jay Cutler got hurt and never came back in. In the Super Bowl, Rodgers absolutely dominated too. He dropped dimes all night long, threw for 304 yards and 3 touchdowns, and walked away with a ring and a Super Bowl MVP. The Favre era was officially over and Green Bay had a new king. Elsewhere, Tom Brady won another MVP and then got blasted by the Jets in the playoffs, and Cam Newton was waiting in the wings, fresh off of a title at Auburn, about to change everything in the NFL. Thus, the 2000s concluded as arguably the most legendary and violent era in NFL history.